He's Layne Norton, and we're going to have a conversation, very interesting, a little bit about his business, his career, everything about his challenges that he's gone through. And we're also going to touch base on metabolism and a little bit of everything. So let's get him on. And hello.
Hey, Astrid, how are you?
I'm very excited to have you on, and I'm sorry for the time difference and everything, a little bit of the confusion.
I should be used to it by now, having done a long-distance relationship with an Australian before, so.
So how are you? How's your day been?
Pretty good. Got some training in, hung out with my kids, and got my done, so that's a solid day.
All right. So I want you to, I want to try to get most of the questions and a little bit of a normal conversation to get you through, understand a little bit. I'm really curious about your background, and I know you probably have shown a lot of everything you've done in the past, and you do a lot of Q&As all the time, but maybe I want to get you, I'm curious to know what led you to choose your career, and what was the motive to get you to where you are right now?
Well, I think I kind of think that if you're paying attention, you don't choose the career chooses you. So I basically got into weightlifting because I was bullied when I was very young, and I started weightlifting to try and stop getting bullied and get attention from girls. Weightlifting didn't solve either of those problems, but I fell in love with the process of weightlifting. So basically, about 3 years into my college degree, I was doing a biochemistry degree. I was really enjoying learning about nutrition. I would keep all my professors after class as long as I could, as long as they would talk to me and try to relate everything they were talking about to bodybuilding. And so I decided, you know what? I don't really know what I want to do with my life. So let's go and do a graduate degree and see where that takes me. And I was lucky enough to find an advisor who was studying the same things that I was studying, or I was interested in, which was muscle protein synthesis. And got into it from there. And at the same time, because I was so passionate about it, I had started writing articles for the bodybuilding.com website. And, this is I'm dating myself, but this was I started doing that in circa 2002. So almost 20 years ago. And I was already getting a lot of inquiries every day from people, saying, hey, can you write me this diet? Or, what should I do about this? Or, those sorts of things. I was probably getting 20, 30 emails a day just on that, just from those articles because they were so popular. So I thought, when I got to grad school, I'm like, well, I don't want to stop helping people, but I also don't have much time. And so I need to get compensated for the time I'm doing. So I just started coaching people, just not even by design, just like, okay, hey, you want me to do this for you? How about $50? That's literally how the conversations went. And over the course of, a decade, that turned into a full-time business that I started during grad school. And so, like I said, there was no grand plan. I didn't set out and say, I'm going to be an online coach, because that didn't even exist when I started kind of doing it. I just was like, well, I'm just really passionate about this. I don't know how to make money with it, but I'm just going to go do a graduate degree and assume I'll figure things out.
And then you moved to a PhD. Is something that you were really, you decided that you really liked nutrition, or was something that pushed you to that way?
I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had no idea. And I felt like, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and that I wasn't really a professional yet. I just felt like I hadn't hard to describe, but even though I'd done a degree in biochemistry, I just felt like I didn't know enough to really like give advice. So I thought, all right, well, what's a way I can delay the real world, since I don't know what I want to do with my life, and learn more. And, you know, grad school kind of became an obvious choice.
And then it's funny because then you finish your PhD and then you went into bodybuilding and powerlifting, or that was at the same time? In the meantime, you were studying.
Yeah, that was all at the same time. So I started lifting weights in I started in 1997, I want to say. God, it's hard to believe I've been doing it that long. I didn't get consistent with it until 1998. Since 1998, I've been pretty much consistently lifting weights for a long period of time, which, by the way, a lot of you out there watching who are looking for magic hacks to get to the body you want, this is a guy who's been doing this 20 years. I didn't have a really good physique, I would consider, until I was probably, 2-3 years into it of consistently working hard. And then to get to world class, obviously, was more like 10 years. So I did my first bodybuilding show in 2001, so kind of 3 years after I started lifting weights. And that was when I was starting my undergraduate degree. So I did my first show was the summer after my first year of university, as you guys call it. Okay. We call it college over here. And then I did shows all throughout my undergraduate, and then I did shows in graduate school as well. That's where I won my pro card. And I started doing powerlifting near the end of graduate school around 2009 and 2010.
Okay. And then did you go into powerlifting as well later on?
Yes, my first powerlifting meet was February of 2009. And then I went back to, I did a few meets, did really well. Went back to bodybuilding to my first series of pro shows in 2010. Actually won my first pro show. And then after that, I went back to powerlifting and haven't left since then because I really, truly fell in love with powerlifting so much.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, which one do you feel is the one you would choose to do more consistently? And what is something that every single sport you've done, powerlifting and bodybuilding, has taught you in some way?
Yeah, so I think if you put a gun to my head, maybe I'd probably choose powerlifting because there's just nothing like coming down to the last deadlift and like needing it to win and pulling it and winning. I've had that experience a few different times and it was amazing. Plus you're having to do, I'm not saying bodybuilding isn't athletic because you have to lift weights, obviously, but you're not doing that on the day of the competition. There's no real athletic endeavor, and posing. You need to be a good poser, but the posing routine is not scored in most federations. So okay. I prefer powerlifting because you get to execute on game day. I think you have I like it because you got a lot of nerves, but at least I can do something with the nerves because I can get fired up and pissed off and go out and lift weights. Yeah, so that would be kind of my pick out of the two of them if I had to pick. But I'll probably go back and do bodybuilding again. Just right now with where I am in my life, we know much more about the psychology of, physique competition and really restrictive dieting now than we did, when I first got into it. And you just become a nutcase by the end of the contest prep. There's no other way around it. I've worked with so many people. At the absolute minimum, you are extremely food focused. Everything is about food. Your rituals, your behaviors, everything. And I don't like that experience of it. And I don't, with two young kids now also, it's going to be hard to tell them, hey, daddy can't eat that. Or, you can have pizza, but dad's going to sit here and have this, that sort of thing. Yes, I feed my kids pizza every once in a while. If you judge me for it, not you, Astrid, but anybody who might be judging me for it. It's important for them to have well-rounded nutrition, including not being fearful of foods, but understanding that we should choose nutritious foods. So yeah, I just don't, I don't feel like dealing with that just yet. I also don't feel like, you get so tired. I cannot explain the level of fatigue 24/7 that you have, at least that I have. It is soul sucking is the only way to describe it. So yeah, I don't want to get, where, my daughter wants me to go fishing and I'll be like, oh man, that's going to be all day on the boat. That's going to be really tiring. That's going to require a lot of effort. Say, oh no, honey, daddy's tired, So at some point I would like to do bodybuilding again, but I'm just not sure when that's going to be just yet.
No, and I really feel like you're coming from a place that you're doing so much things right now, and bodybuilding is very demanding especially psychologically. Well, you have the physical commitment to it and all the training, but also like the emotional, psychological commitment is really, really demanding on you. And I guess that's where it becomes really tricky, because you have to kind of endeavor and go on and be really consistent and go everything to the minimum. You got to measure everything, and it can be very, like, on top of everything you've got right now, put more stress on top of it could be very, very tiring, and I guess it's just going to be much more stress for you.
Yeah,
it would be definitely very tough.
My wife and I joke that we work together at the same office and we live in the same house, and we get about 20-30 minutes of quality time together a day. So it's very tough. Like you said, I've got 3 different businesses. It's going to be 4 soon. And so, yeah, it's one of those things when those become self-sustaining, in terms of it doesn't need my direct involvement every single day. And when my kids are a little bit older and a little bit more independent, then maybe I'll look at doing a bodybuilding comeback. But as of now, powerlifting is still a large time investment, because the training is 2 to 3 hours a day, and then the rehab and prehab is probably about another solid hour a day. So it's still a lot, but once I'm done with that stuff, I'm done with that stuff. I don't think about it again during the day. When you're bodybuilding, it's all when you get lean enough, it's all the time. That for those listening who've never competed, think about the hungriest you've ever been in your life, and then imagine that feeling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until you're done. It's very difficult. Oh,
I can guarantee that. And going to that question that you were just saying that you own a few businesses and you do a lot of things. I'm just amazed how you manage your time. And I really want to get into that question. And how do you do? I just saw, like, you just launched a podcast. You have written books. You always across all your social media platforms. You are doing lives in your Facebook groups. You're doing your carbo diet app coach. How do you get time for all of those things during the day? What do you do? How do you do that?
Yeah, so there's no magic solution here. Like it's everybody's got the same 24 hours in a day. Now, obviously, I work for myself, so I can kind of make my hours. But if I'm going to train 2 or 3 hours a day, and then I've got an hour of rehab, prehab, that sort of thing, and I'm eating for a certain period of time, and I've got other fixed responsibilities, I've only got so much time during the day. So one, we have a schedule, we have a content schedule, and to be honest, I pay a lot of people to give me my time back, meaning, and this is going to sound very privileged, but it's because I work so hard. I don't clean my house. I don't clean the office. I, for the most part, don't cook. Like, we have, food delivered for us from, different companies like Icon Meals and that sort of thing. I don't cut my grass. I don't wash the driveway. I don't clean my car, all that kind of stuff, because all that stuff is opportunity cost. Now, for somebody, like, I make a really good living, so I'm able to do that. And that gives me back so much more of my time. But if I was, single, making $50,000 a year, you bet your ass I'd be washing my car and cleaning it out. You know what I mean? So it all depends on where you are in kind of your journey. But you know, what happens is the demands on your time as you get busier or as you get more and more successful, your demands on your time, like people will say, I had somebody last week said, you know, I've sent you this question so many times, you never answered it. And I'm thinking, do you know how many questions I get a day? Like, it's not a personal, it wasn't like I looked at your question was like, oh yeah, fuck that guy. It was, I just didn't get a chance to see it. You know, like I can't explain to people literally, you know, Holly and I decide, let me give you an example. It's just something we actually think about and is very important to us. Who drives when both of us are in the car depends on who has more stuff they need to get done in terms of social media. Because we're not talking to each other in the car. One person is working, always. So that is part of it. I'm just being, you know, completely honest. And then honestly, you know, we come home from the office. We usually get home around 7. If it's a week I have the kids, I'll get home a little bit earlier than that. And that's another thing. We have a nanny, so that's a huge, like, I would not be able to go do what I do if we didn't have a great nanny. So we do all those things. We come home, we eat dinner. We might spend, you know, 30, 40 minutes together, like watching a show or talking or whatever. And then we start getting ready for bed. And then while we're lying in bed is usually when we take care of like Facebook questions and questions on Instagram and like all this different stuff. So it's like a full day of work plus all the other stuff. And then people don't understand too, like social media, like I like social media. I'm not going to like pretend, I do like it, but it's still work. Like it's still like I would much rather spend that time with my kids or with Holly or whatever. So every time, like for those of you guys listening and watching, please understand, like if I answer a question for you, that was 30, it might have only been 30 seconds for me, but it was 30 seconds I could have spent with my wife or kids. So that's why, for example, when people ask me, oh, hey, why don't you collab with, like, I don't know. I had somebody ask me one time, why don't you collab with The Rock? And I'm like, I would love to collab with The Rock, but it probably doesn't make sense for his time. Plus, I think some people have this, like, there's this thing when, like, somebody is more famous than you or you perceive somebody as famous, you don't understand that there's levels to fame either. Like, people will say, when's the next time you're getting on Joe Rogan? I'll be like, well, I can't really just, like, call Joe Rogan up. Like, I don't have his direct line just because I was on his podcast once. But those people are so busy. Like, seconds of their time is precious. So I'm starting to get a better appreciation for that, especially now with, you know, having, you know, so many irons in the fire in terms of, you know, we've still got BioLayne, we've got Carbon Diet Coach, the app, we've got Outwork Nutrition that's coming out, and I'm developing with Bill Campbell Physique Coaching Academy, which will be an accredited physique-orientated coaching certification that, don't ask me when it's going to be available, guys. It's going to be a while. It takes a long time to get this stuff done. And then obviously all the books and that kind of stuff. So it's a lot. Thankfully, I really enjoy it and I love it. But there's no secrets. I just pay as many people as I can to give me as much of my time back as I can. And then I don't waste my time, you know. And if I'm going to do something, like if I'm going to do something that's non-work or non-productive, it's going to be something I really, really enjoy, you know. So sometimes that means it's a video game because every once in a while I love playing video games, or I'm going shooting because I love target shooting, or I'm you know, going fishing for the day. And if I do that, that means I've got to work doubly hard the next 5 days afterwards to make up for that time I wasn't there.
And the days you decide to just go a little bit, take your time off, take your time for you and Holly and your kids, do you feel like you kind of try to disconnect completely, or how do you do with like knowing that you have so much things to do? Because I struggle sometimes a lot when I know I have so much things to do and I really want to disconnect, but my head starts spinning around on things that, ideas that come to my head, or things that, I should be doing this because this is a great idea. Or you have like a notepad where you write down things if you have it in your head, so you can just sort of put the idea down and then just move on? Or what would you do in that case?
I used to really struggle with this really badly. In fact, actually, I didn't struggle with it because I just worked all the time. I just worked all the time. And then once I had kids and, you know, met Holly and all that kind of stuff, it had to change. And I got much better slowly over time. I think also just my experience. So I've been, you know, self-employed for my entire adult life. So for 15 years, I've been, is it 15 years? Yeah, it's 15 years. I've been self-employed. So I learned that, you know what, not everything has to get done today. And part of being self-employed means you will always go to bed feeling like you didn't do enough and that there's more stuff to do. There will always be more stuff to do. But I can't ever get back that time with my kids. I'll have all the time to go do this stuff, but I can't get back that time with my kids. I can't get back that time with Holly, you know, that sort of stuff. So now that's not to say I don't still struggle with it. I actually have a really bad habit of looking at my phone because I have ADHD. I get easily distracted, and I have a hard time staying engaged in a conversation. So I'll, like, you know, I could be out at dinner and I might pick up my phone, not trying to be rude, but I'll just forget. So one of the things I've had to do is, okay, I'm taking the phone, I'm putting it in my pocket, and I'm not getting it out. You know, with Holly really struggles with this still. She still really struggles with this. So much so that she really only unplugs on the weekend. But one of the things we also do is we pick things where we kind of have to unplug. Like when we go out in the boat, you know, it's so bright and sunny, it's hard to even look at your phone, you know.
Yep.
You know, so kind of go out in the boat unplugs us. You know, I think it's tough at the house too, because we used to have office here. So it always feels like work even when we're here. So sometimes we'll go on, like this weekend, we're going away for the weekend. Not very far, but just, you know, someplace different so we can unplug and feel like we're in a different place. I find that, especially for people like Holly, you know, who really struggle with like OCD, anxiety, that sort of stuff, like getting them separated from their normal day-to-day is really important just to get them to unplug. I've gotten much better about unplugging when I get home. Save today for an example, but still. So I think a lot of it is just those 15 years of being in business and understanding that, hey, if I don't get it done today, it's not the end of the world.
And would you say, have you thought about maybe having assistants that where they answer your questions, answer your messages or things like that, or is something that you think it is so personal they don't want to put some of your words in someone else's that might mess it up or say something that you didn't intend to say?
Yeah, so I've had an assistant for 7 years now, a few different ones, and that's been a huge help. But at the end of the day, like, you are the one that has your knowledge, right? And you are you. And like, not to sound arrogant, but like, for whatever reason, people have identified with me or followed me. You know, plenty of people have good information. There's a lot of people out there with good information, but not everybody becomes an influencer or whatever it is. I don't know why, you know, people decided to go with me or that identified with me, but I was able to build a strong following. And, you know, so having an assistant help with that, but I still, like, I've got to do some of the back and forth. Like, I have to do it. And I nobody else, like, when you see my Instagram posts, that's me posting that. That's me writing that caption up. That's me responding to people in the comments. That's me answering direct messages. Nobody's ever, like, nobody answers. Now, if you send an inquiry, like, through our website, that'll go to my assistant. Or you send an inquiry for coaching for Team BioLayne, that goes through our assistant. You know, that sort of stuff. And that can help. But at the end of the day, you know, I can't outsource everything, unfortunately.
Yeah, so like you say, there are some things like inside your business, like when it comes to BioLayne or maybe carbon diet coach, responding to the customers, you might have an assistant, but when it comes to like managing your social media, responding tweets, or like doing these little things that are very very driven by your personality, I think that's when it becomes a little bit harder to actually delegate it to someone else's.
Absolutely. Very difficult. I think the thing that you're like, if you're really, one of the things I've kind of done is say, okay, you know what, I'm going to double down on what I'm really good at. I think I'm really good at social media. Some people would argue that, you know, well, you're abrasive and this and that, but hey, some people will identify with the fact that I just don't take any shit and I call it as it is. So I think I'm good at social media. I think I'm an entertaining educator, is I think one of the things that sets me apart. I think a lot of people provide entertainment, a lot of people provide education, but I don't think a lot of people do it well together. So I put more time into that, which, you know, today I spent, you know, probably 30 minutes searching for the right meme that I wanted to use. And then I spent another probably 15 minutes figuring out, okay, what is the text I'm going to write above that meme? You know, I went through a few different variations. And then, you know, it was, okay, now I'm going to put my logo on it, you know, and now I'm going to, now I got to write the caption. The caption probably took me another, you know, 25 minutes or so. And then, you know, I've got to tag my whole team and, you know, make sure the line breaks are correct and all that. And the whole thing probably took about 2 hours, you know. Most people say, oh, you just post a picture on Instagram, you know, put it up there. But that's not how it works, you know.
I like that you actually put any post that you do, you actually try to put some context to it and want to send a message across, even if it's educational or anything that relates to anyone that could be reading that message, and you try to teach something or like provide value. And I think that's where this your account and everything you put out becomes very valuable, because it's not just posting a picture, or same with Holly, she might put a photo of herself, but she's actually looking to provide value in her captions, or make it relevant, not just like feel selfish looking at myself in my Instagram feed, but it's actually looking for how can I best provide value today to someone who could benefit from what I'm going to talk about.
That is 100% accurate, especially when it comes to Holly. Holly can think, like somebody referred to her as a fitness model once, and Holly can think of nothing worse than to just put up like a physique picture with no value in the caption. You know what I mean? So, you know, we kind of do a little bit of a bait and switch with Holly, which meaning we put up a picture of her looking fantastic, but then that catches somebody's attention, but then there's the caption that provides a ton of educational value. And I think that's the difference between obviously her and your typical fitfluencers of, you know, good vibes only, and then that's the only thing in the caption. It's like, okay, great, cool. You know, plus, you know, and then the 10% discount link is in their bio, you know. So
yeah.
Same here. You know, I really, even if it's an infographic, I'm going to try and, you know, break down the infographic, that sort of thing. Even if it's a study, I'm going to try and talk about the study, talk about it. Even if it's a sales post, like even if I'm selling something, I still try to provide value in that post of, you know, so the person can learn something, or they understand a little bit more about why I'm selling something, you know. So we always try to provide some kind of value.
Talking about research, now that you mentioned that, I'm curious, and a lot of people always asking, how do you do to break down a very difficult study or a big study? How do you navigate through it to understand it, or just get across the message that the authors are trying to provide? So what would you look at when it comes to reading research that you say, this is the most important part that you should be focusing on to get the main sort of little points that you want to take for providing message across?
Yeah, so I actually don't worry about what the authors are trying to convey, because the authors have bias I actually am just going to look at their results. And so I look for a few things. Now, I'm going to be straight up. If you don't have any training in reading an academic paper, or you haven't done research, or you haven't at least had some undergraduate classes, it's going to be quite the slog to try and get through one. It's going to be really tough. And I'm not saying that as an elitist or anything. It's just the facts, right? But what I'm looking for when I go, the first thing I'm looking for is I go to the results, because that's just reported. It is what it is. I read the results, then I look at the methods, and then I look at what was their hypothesis. So I'm looking at what actually happened, what they found. Then I'm looking at, okay, what did they think they were going to find? And then I'm looking at their methods, and I'm going to say, all right, what they wanted to test, did they actually test it? And that happens way more often than you would ever believe, that authors say, we want to test this. And then the way their study is designed does not even test the question they were wanting to ask. So then I might read the discussion. I don't usually read the discussion because, again, so people jump to a conclusion from a paper. The conclusion of a scientific paper is simply the author's opinion. Now, the authors probably have the most right to an opinion because they did the actual research. But still, it's their opinion and their bias. So I look at results first, methods, and then I look, do the methods actually, are they equipped sufficient to answer the question they wanted to ask? And that's kind of where I start. And just because it's so hard, biolayne.com membership will actually have a research review here in a few months. So we're going to have we'll review
so cool.
five research articles, and we will break them down in such a manner that they're a little bit more palatable and digestible for the average person.
That's so cool. And I think when you talk about looking at the results and looking at methods and whether they actually answer the question on what were they looking for, is pretty much what you really want to use to then see whether the paper is worth it to kind of look at the whole thing or going a little bit deeper. Because I guess when you're looking for a specific paper or on a specific topic, you kind of need to search first about the topic, and then few or thousands of studies will come up. How do you decide which one is the right one that you want to pick or choose to use it?
So when I was younger, I used to kind of look more at individual studies. Now I tell people I don't get excited about one study. It's very rare that I'll get excited about one study. If it's a study that's showing something different or something new, I don't get excited until there's a lot of studies. I've just seen so many things come in that were going to be the next big thing, and then they just don't pan out over time. The first thing I look at is what is are there any systematic reviews, any meta-analyses? Is there consistency between the systematic review conclusions and the meta-analyses? For those of you who are wondering what a systematic review or meta-analysis is, basically it is a study of studies. So they take a bunch of different studies that are similar in design, and they combine the results to try to form a consensus. So that is the first place I'll go, because that is a systematic, objective, analytical way to look, is there a consensus? I don't read narrative reviews. A narrative review basically is an author that kind of gets to tell a story and pick I've written a narrative review before, full disclosure, but it's just my opinion, right? At the end of the day, it's just an opinion, it's a narrative review. So I look at those systematic reviews, I look at the meta-analyses. If there's conflict between those, my next step is, okay, is there any agreement amongst the experts in the area, the people who are the most, well-versed? If there's a lot of disagreement between those, like, for example, let's say, let's look low carb versus low fat. All right. If you look at the meta-analyses of protein calorie equated, you see very little to no difference in fat loss. And you see very little to no difference in long-term adherence either. Okay, cool. Let's say there was differences. Well, then you step down, okay, what do the consensus of the experts in the field say? If we're talking about actual experts and not dudes, not doctors stepping outside their area of expertise on Twitter, or disgruntled professors, the consensus is very clear that it doesn't really matter. It's mostly about calories and protein and fiber. Then if there was still some kind of discordance between, it was unclear, my next step down is, what do the most tightly controlled studies say? So if I find, for that particular topic, so in this one, randomized control trial in a metabolic ward, right? And metabolic wards have limitations. You can only have a very small number of subjects, and it's going to be a very short period of time. But my next default is the most close, tightly controlled studies. And in that aspect, actually, in some ways, things like Mendelian randomization studies for, things that you can't really do a randomized control trial over. People's RCTs are kind of the gold standard. Well, you can't really do an RCT where you have one group get cancer and the other group not get cancer. Like you can't really do that. So mostly what we default to is epidemiology, which has a lot of limitations. But things like Mendelian randomization, for example. So Mendelian randomization looks at different genetic sequences that cause people to have different physiological outcomes, and then they can kind of grade them. So an example would be LDL cholesterol, right? So LDL cholesterol, it's hard to, we're pretty sure it is a causative factor for atherosclerosis. However, people who have high LDL cholesterol also tend to have a lot of confounding variables, as in they have a high THEs, they have low HDL, they tend to have an overall unhealthy lifestyle. So if we Mendelian randomize, meaning we look at people who just genetically have low cholesterol versus high cholesterol and everywhere in between, you still see a very linear relationship in terms of LDL cholesterol and heart disease. So that kind of takes the lifestyle stuff out of it and just looks at, okay, if we dose this over the course of a lifetime, what do we see? So I think in things where we can't do RCTs, MR studies are kind of the next best thing. But that's my hierarchy: systematic reviews and meta-analyses, expert consensus opinion, most tightly controlled experiments.
Cool. That's a good summary of the question I asked you. And I want to get into one question that probably is a little bit different when it comes to studies. It's more about some of the things you have mentioned in your books, and you're always talking about metabolism. And I really wanted to get a little bit of what would you be your definition on metabolism? And let's look at, after you answer that question, how do you do when it comes to looking at efficiency, when metabolism is very efficient and when it's very inefficient? And a lot of people get these terms confused. So what would you say about that when people say, well, my metabolism is really slow, or metabolism is really fast, or I tend to lose fat really quickly, or I struggle doing that?
So there's a lot to unpack there. But metabolism is essentially just a summation of all metabolic reactions in the body. Now, your metabolic rate is the amount of energy required to power those reactions, right? So a lot of reactions in the body are what's called non-favorable, meaning if you want that reaction to occur, you need to put in energy to have that reaction occur. Just like if you want to start your car, your battery's got to provide energy for you to start your car, right? And then you have to obviously provide energy in the form of gas or petrol to keep that car going. So the metabolic rate is the summation of those metabolic reactions. So that's how much energy you require. And in nutrition, we term, calories, essentially. And people misunderstand calories all the time. Calories are calorie is literally a definition of energy. It is not a molecule. It is not, when people say all calories aren't created equal, yes, they are. Saying they aren't created equal is like saying all dollar bills aren't created equal. Yes, they are. They have the same value. Now, that being said, if I invest my dollars, if I invest $10,000 or $100,000 in good digital marketing, I'm going to get a lot more money back than if I invest $100,000 in a sports car, right? So in that way, all sources of dollars are not created equal. In the same way that all calories are equal, but all sources of calories are not equal in terms of their effects on energy expenditure and that sort of thing. So I think that's important to get out of the way.
Yeah.
But people think that the reason they don't lose weight is because they have a slow metabolism, or the reason why people get fat is they have a slow metabolism. That is just not supported by the research data for the most part. The research shows that overweight people, obese people, actually have faster metabolic rates than lean people. And that's just because of the large body mass. That's part of it. But additionally, people say, well, that diet didn't work for me. I'm type 2 diabetic. Once again, when they equate calories, type 2 diabetic and obese people lose weight, if not just as well as lean or normal people, they actually lose it better in terms of their weight loss efficiency. This is going to sound very attacking for some people out there if they're overweight or obese, but I'll explain it. If you feel like you have a slow metabolism, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, it does exist, but what is far more likely is you are not tracking your nutrition accurately. Let me explain. Of obese people underreport their caloric intake by 50 to 70%. Normal people underreport 30 to 50%, and dietitians even underreport their nutritional intake by about 10%. Now, when I say that, so for example, I had a gal, she messaged me, she's like, well, I'm eating 1,600 calories and I'm not losing weight. And I kind of did that, well, are you really? So I said, for 1 week, just do this for 1 week. Just weigh don't even change your nutrition. Just weigh every single thing that goes in your mouth. Weigh it out, log it, okay? I don't care if it's a stick of sugar-free gum, log it, everything. You know what she was really taking in? 2,600 calories. She legitimately thought, she wasn't lying, she legitimately thought that she was taking in 1,600 calories. She didn't know that she was over-consuming. And the reason is most people are terrible at being able to understand portion sizes. For example, people will make a bowl of ice cream and assume that's 1 serving. A bowl of ice cream is probably 4 servings of ice cream, if it's worth a shit. A bowl of cereal could be 6 servings of cereal. It is, so people, it's not that people are trying to lie. They just look at the food label and then they estimate and they think that they're getting it correct, and they're just not. And for so many people, they hear what I've said, and what they hear is, you're a liar, you're a glutton. No. I'm not saying you're a liar. What I'm saying is, all of us, myself included, are terrible at estimating our intake, which is why I mostly weigh shit. Not always, but if I have the option, I will weigh it. So again, it's unlikely that a slow metabolism is why people are having a hard time losing weight. It's much more behaviors, lifestyle, that sort of thing. As far as inefficient versus efficient metabolism, I talked about this a lot in my book, Fat Loss Forever, but essentially, we hear the word efficiency and we think it's a good thing. But when it comes to losing fat, being inefficient is actually better. Like, you don't want to be, like, if your gas tank, if your petrol, your fuel tank is your body's body fat stores, because that is your stored fuel, your body fat. You don't want the Prius that can go, 150 kilometers on a shit. I have to convert to liters. Damn. You don't
That's
want
all
the
right.
Prius. You don't want the Prius that can go longer. You want to be the gas guzzling, SUV that burns through it really quickly. Well, the problem with that is that as we diet, one of the reasons people get really confused about calories in, calories out is that they assume that calories in and calories out are two separate, independent variables. And so you'll hear people say things like, well, I ate in a calorie deficit, I didn't lose weight. No, you're assuming that calories in doesn't affect calories out, but calories in affects calories out. It changes calories out the same way calories out actually may change calories in. So let me give an example with that. As you diet, as you lose weight, your body becomes more efficient, right? Your basal metabolic rate drops. Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis drops. That helps you prevent yourself from starving, okay? Let me give an example to this. And I like to use money because I think money is very inherent for a lot of people. If you make $50,000 a year, and at that amount of income, you're able to save, let's say, $5,000 a year, right? That means you are spending 45 and you are saving 5. If you suddenly got a job where you made let's say 500,000 per year, theoretically, you should be able to save $455,000 per year, right? Because now you're making that much more. But is that what happens? No. Once you've got a lot more money, you become more wasteful with it because you don't need to be as attentive to it. Funny enough, your body works very similarly. If you are getting in more calories, your body becomes less efficient. It wastes more energy, right? That's why people who try to do, some people may have had this experience, you try to do a lean gain phase where you're like, well, I'm just going to be 100 calories over my maintenance. And what happens? You don't gain anything, nothing, and then boom, all of a sudden you gain like a pound or two. Whereas on the opposite end, if you're getting in less calories, your body, in an effort to survive, is going to lower caloric expenditure. So no, you didn't eat in a calorie deficit and not lose weight. You ate in what you thought was a calorie deficit, or what should have been a calorie deficit, or was predicted to be a calorie deficit. But let me be clear, if you didn't lose weight, at least over weeks and months, because short-term water fluctuations don't count. But if you didn't lose weight, it wasn't a calorie deficit.
Absolutely. And I guess this is a really good way to wrap it up. We've done quite a few questions, but I'm conscious of your time. You haven't had dinner yet. I haven't had breakfast.
Wait, no.
So I really appreciate of your time and having this time to dedicate it to talk a little bit about yourself, about your business, research, and metabolism. And I would really love you to tell people that might not be following you yet where they can follow you and what are the things that you have in the future planned for new projects or things like that.
Yeah, so first off, thanks for having me on the live. But you can always find me at BioLayne or biolayne.com is my website. My app is Carbon Diet Coach, which is it's $10 US per month, and basically is a nutrition coach in your pocket. You put in your information, it will give you customized nutrition recommendations based on your individual goals, metabolism, and the input you put in. But there's other apps that do that. Not as good as ours. But the difference is you check in every week with the coaching portion of the app, and the app will adjust you based on how you're responding. I see a few people are already saying how much they like the app. So that's awesome. We have over 15,000 members. It's killing it. We have 4.8 stars on the App Store. Like it's amazing. I have no qualms about saying that. I've done a few books. Fat Loss Forever was our big hit. I want to do a lean like how to do a lean gaining book in the future as well. Then obviously we have the Physique Coaching Academy that's going to be coming up. We have our new podcast, Beauty and the Geek, which is going to be on all the different platforms for podcasts. And what else am I missing? Oh, my supplement line is going to be coming out, Outwork Nutrition. I think a lot of people are going to really love that. And then obviously our research review is also going to be really helpful for a lot of people. So with anything we do, we're just really aiming to provide a ton of value for everybody. And I think that that's reflected in, people who buy our products. And for the most part, we have extremely favorable reviews. Also, sorry, I almost forgot. I have two short courses already available with Clean Health Fitness Institute in Australia. You can take anywhere in the world from your own time. They're called The Science of Nutrition and Training the Physique Athlete. And those courses actually have nothing but 5-star ratings on Google as well. So, I think I'm not going to lie. I would like to make a lot of money, but I want to do that by providing people with an amazing value and a lot of utility. And I believe that if we do that, the money will take care of itself.
Yes, that would be probably the only way that will happen. So thank you so much for coming in, and you have a great night.
Thank you, Astrid. Thank you so much for having me on.
Bye-bye.